In this series, and exclusive to this channel, I'll be taking you through the evidence in full that Lucy Letby gave to the court during her 10 days on the witness stand. The purpose behind this series is to give you, the viewer, a full and factual understanding of the evidence presented to Lucy Letby during her original trial. What you'll hear next is Lucy Letby's cross-examination in court. This took place at Manchester Crown Court and was conducted by Nicholas Johnson, KC. I'm going to move on to the case of Child D. I want to start, if we may, with your defence statement, please. So if you can find that typed document in front of you. It starts this section of the document at paragraph 58. Yes. I'd be grateful if you would read out paragraphs 58 to 66, as these are your words. I did nothing to hurt Child D. I was not in the nursery before 19:30 on the 21st of June 2015. When I did come on duty, I was not looking after Child D, and I would not have been with her and able to have a conversation there with her mother. I did not have a conversation with Child D's mother about bubbles around Child D's mouth. At paragraph 60 you say, quote, I think the nurse described as being at Child D's cot at 1900 to 1920 is Kate Bissell. It would have been this nurse that Child D's mother spoke to and not me. I have no specific recollection of the collapse at 01:30. I was probably in nursery 1 when this happened. I don't think I had any involvement with Child D until the resuscitation. She was not my allocated baby. I think I was with Caroline Oakley at 0300 or 0345 when the collapse occurred. I can't remember who found Child D or what state she was in. I did not do the footprints or the handprints for Child D. Okay. Were you affected at all by the death of Child D? We were all affected on the unit that night, yes. Would you answer for yourself rather than including other people? Were you affected by it? Yes. You didn't, for example, think something like, well, it's happened and that's it? No. You said in an interview, and indeed to the police, that you can't remember much about Child D, haven't you? That's right. And that is not true, is it? No, I believe that is true. Let's see what the evidence shows. Can we start, please, Mr. Murphy, with tile 168 of the sequence? If we could just look at the children and the staff, please. So we see, don't we there, that nursery 1 was where Child D was. Yes. Caroline Oakley was her designated nurse. Yes. J.E., as a matter of interest, was the same J.E. who'd been looking after the night Child C died. So they were in nursery 1, you were looking after them. Yes. 3 babies in nursery 2, with Caroline Oakley responsible for one of them. Yes. And therefore Caroline Oakley was splitting her time between nursery 1 and nursery 2. Yes. And it follows, doesn't it, that therefore you would have been alone in nursery 1 from time to time? At times, yes. I'm going to start by reminding you of some evidence that Child D's mother gave to the jury on the 3rd of November last year. Okay. This is in relation to the resuscitation. I couldn't really see Child D. The way he, and that's a reference to Dr. Brunton, was holding her, I was seeing more of his back, and we were standing there looking at Child D dying. Somebody was holding a phone to his ear, and he kept shouting, "This is Child D," and he was quite agitated. Then Dr. Newby told him that he had to let Child D go. He had to stop. She tapped on his shoulder and said, "You've got to let her go." So he held her, but he stopped massaging her and he pronounced the time of death. I couldn't stay in the room anymore, so then I asked Child D's dad to take me away. Okay? Yes. Do you remember that? Yes. Sorry? Yes, I remember her saying that, yes. You were the nurse holding the phone to Dr. Brunton's ear, weren't you? No, I don't agree with that. Oh. Child D's mother identified you as that nurse, didn't she, in her statement? Yes, but I can't confirm that that was me. Right. So you dispute it because you can't remember it, even though it's agreed evidence? I'm saying I have no memory of doing it. Do you dispute it? I don't think I understand. Do you understand what the word dispute means? It's your word I'm using, you see. You tell us what you mean by dispute as you've used it. If we're going to accept what her mum said as the truth, then that's different, but me remembering it, I dispute that actually happened from my memory. I would be reliant on her accounts being accurate, but I can't confirm that either way. Yes, there's a difference between agreed evidence, of course, because you are given the opportunity to go through these statements before they're read to the jury, aren't you? Yes. Child D's mother actually said this in court. Yes. And it wasn't disputed on your behalf. I can't recall that. Do you remember a phone being held by someone to the doctor's ear? Yes, I do recall that incident happened, yes. So you can remember there was such an incident? Yes, because it was talked about after the event. Because the wrong mother was phoned, wasn't she? Yes, that's the problem. I agree it happened, but I cannot say that it was me that made that phone call. I want to move on to other bits of evidence and see whether you dispute these. Catherine Percival Ward, she was in nurseries 3 and 4. Do you remember that or not? Yes. What is her experience as you remember it? She's a very experienced senior nurse. Been working as a nurse for more than 30 years, hadn't she? Yes. She said this. It was on her body, so all from her chest downwards, her trunk and her arms. And it wasn't like a normal rash that you would know if a baby was becoming septic, because the blood vessels seem to be more bluey, they're quite mottled. This seemed to be a larger like mosaic-type rash, and it was a reddy blue. The reddy brown colour in it was more like the vessels, or like oval-type markings on the skin. But the vessels of blood, or whatever it was, seemed to be meeting up on each other. So that is the evidence she gave on November 9th. It's at pages 62 to 64 of the transcript, if anybody wants to check. Was she a friend of yours? Kate Percival Ward. Yes. I wouldn't say we were close, but we got on well, yes. Is she mistaken about what she saw? Well, again, if that's what she saw, I can't comment on what she did or didn't see. Do you dispute it? I did not see that. Caroline Oakley, who we've established was in nurseries 1 and 2. She said the following. I don't remember specifically the exact rash, but I remember I hadn't seen it before. It was dark, it was unusual, and the rash struck me. I hadn't seen that rash before on a baby I've looked after. I've put discoloration. I remember it as like a deep red-brown, different than mottling, different from what I have seen before. If anyone wants to check that, it's 4th of November last year, page 45. Was Caroline Oakley a friend of yours? Not outside of work, no. Is she a very experienced nurse? Yes. Is she mistaken in what she saw? No, that sounds similar. I agree with that. Nurse C, who we saw from the population chart, was in nursery 2. Yes. What she said is this. I remember her skin was discoloured and that she was quite stiff in appearance, like a mottled appearance, which is like white circles of skin with a discoloration around it, which was like a reddy colour. I remember it because it was an odd rash. I would say commonly in a baby that might need some attention, the baby will be blue or grey, and the mottling, that colour mottling, is around the white patches, whereas this was not that colour. I remember from my statement this morning that I've written that it was like a reddy brown colour. It was unusual, and it didn't match a colour that I had seen before. It was like circles with a blood supply around them. Again, if anyone wants to check, that's November the 8th last year, pages 65 to 67. Did you have any issues with Nurse C? No. Is she a very experienced nurse? Yes. Approximately how much experience? Well, many years. I don't know her exact background, but... Is she mistaken about what she saw? No. Dr. Newby. This is what she said. I've put in inverted commas, bruised areas on her abdomen like evolving purpura. There were 2 areas, they were sort of elongated areas. I couldn't give you the precise position on her abdomen, they were quite hard to describe in a way. It was like a sort of brown discoloration, They were sort of linear bruises. Bruises is the best way I can describe it, really. That's November the 9th, pages 20 to 22. Is Dr. Newby mistaken about what she saw? I can't confirm about the location of it, but yes, the description of it I agree with. She is not one of the Gang of Four? No. Dr. Brunton, this is what he said. I've documented that the skin at this point was brown, and there were areas of discoloration within that were light brown, like evolving purpura across the trunk, it says. Because this is a completely unusual situation that I'd never seen before, changes in the skin, I couldn't explain it. That was the 7th of November last year, pages 35 to 37. Is Dr. Brunton mistaken about what he saw? No. That was Child D's first collapse as far as he was concerned. On the second occasion she collapsed, he said this. She had a bit of a rash, but again I can't remember the rash previously, but she had a little bit of a rash present on her abdomen. Is he mistaken about that? I can't be specific at what time the different coloration was. The final time, just before Child D died, he said the following. I've observed that she had a bit of skin discoloration at that time. I've never seen a baby behave in that manner prior to this, and I've never seen a baby behave in that manner after this. So a bit of skin discoloration at that time? Is he mistaken about that? No. Finally, Dr. Emily Thomas. She said this. I remember Child D had an unusual episode where she came out in a rash. This occurred around 01:30 in the morning. I remember taking a look. I would describe the rash as almost having the appearance of meningococcal type rash. It was purple in colour and mainly over the abdomen. Child D seemed to settle down and the rash appeared to fade. That was an agreed statement and was read to the jury on November 8th. So although it was an agreed statement, out of an abundance of caution, I will ask you, do you dispute that? No, I agreed it looked purple, and I agreed it looked like a meningococcal rash. And do you still not remember Child D? I didn't recall Child D at the time of my police interview, no. Do you remember her now? Yes. Do you remember the circumstances surrounding her death? No. Let's see what you were doing in the immediate aftermath of her death. If we go to tile 286, please. I'd be grateful if you'd read out your words. I said, we had such a rubbish night. Our job is just far too sad sometimes. And your friend, Nurse A, replied, no, what happened? And you replied, I replied, we lost Child D. And then Nurse A replied, what? But she was improving, what happened? And then, want a chat? I can't believe you are on again, you're having such a tough time. Then you? I replied, messed about a couple of times and came out in this weird-looking rash like overwhelming sepsis. Liz came in, re-screened, etc. So this is a reference, isn't it, by you, to multiple collapses, messed about a couple of times? Yes. Came out in this weird rash? Yes, I recall she had like a meningococcal rash, yes. Looking like overwhelming sepsis? Had you seen lots of meningococcal rashes? Not a lot, no. How many? I couldn't put a figure on it. I've seen it during my training on the children's ward. So several years earlier? Yes, and the discussion at the time was that the rash was due to overwhelming sepsis. Liz came in. That's Dr. Newby, isn't it? Yes. Rescreened, etc., etc. You did remember Child D when you were interviewed by the police, didn't you? I remembered parts. I think I don't. Well, let's look at the next text and see whether that persuades you. I said, then collapsed and had full resus. So upsetting for everyone. Parents absolutely distraught. Dad screaming. Parents absolutely distraught. Dad screaming. When you told the police you didn't really remember Child D, that was a lie, wasn't it? No, I didn't have any great recollection of the events, no. Tile 294, please. Can you read your message? I said, Andrew and Liz said it will probably be investigated. That's Doctors Brunton and Newby? Is that right? Yes. Nurse A replies, Dad was very anxious all day. What, the delay in treatment? And you replied? I replied, just overall looking into the case. And at tile 298? I said, and reviewing what antibiotics she was on, etc., if it is sepsis. Then at tile 299? Dad is beside himself. They only saw her briefly, but don't want her to be moved out of one. Didn't like family room, but obviously can't really stay in one, and got a 33-weeker about to deliver, and we got 2 screens that have stayed. So 2 references now to the father of child D, yes? Yes. This was a dramatic and shocking incident, wasn't it? Yes. And you remembered it very well when you spoke to the police in reality, didn't you? No. Can we go to tile 307, please? Would you read this out? I said, well, it's happened and that's it. Got to carry on. I finished for nearly 2 weeks after next Friday, so I'll keep ploughing on. Do you remember almost the first question I asked you about child D? Yes. Was I affected? Yes. And I then said, did you think, well, it's all happened and that's it? And your answer was? Well, it's happened and that's it. No, you said that wasn't what you were thinking, was your answer. That was a lie, wasn't it? I don't think it's meant in the context that you're suggesting. Oh, well, you give us the context. That it's happened and we need to move forward and keep going. I don't think it's meant to be any insensitivity to the parents or child D. You were enjoying all of this, weren't you, Lucy Letby? No. Something I forgot to ask you earlier, but I'll ask you now. Is there anything that you said yesterday, or indeed have said this morning, that you have reflected on and wish to reconsider? No. If we go back to the sequence of events, please, tile 360. I haven't asked you at all yet about your repeated searching of these parents on Facebook, okay? And I intend to ask you about them all together in one go towards the end. But in this particular case, given what you told the police about not remembering child D, how did you remember the name of her mother, the mother of child D, on June 25th? On the 25th of June, I did recall child D in 2015. How did you recall the name of her parents? I don't know. Have you got a good memory for names? Yes. Do you have to keep a written record of the names? No. You carry them in your head, is that right? Yes. So when we, for example, see you in other cases searching many months or even longer later, you still remember the names? Yes. Would you say you've got a good memory? Yes. Can we move on to tile 362, please? This was a message you sent to your friend Mina. Would you read it, please? I said, yes, work has been awful. She then replied on the next tile, oh dear, staffing probe? And then you said? I replied, we've had 3 unexpected deaths, transfer out. Few sick ones, unit full. And then at tile 365? I said, what I've seen has really hit me tonight. And then she replied, have you worked today? And you replied? I said, no, I've been off since Wednesday morning, and now it's all hit me. She then replied, with all the Walton stuff and work stuff, you could do with talking to a proper counsellor. If you don't sleep well, etc., it will damage your health in the long run. And you replied? I said, I just don't think I can. She then said, why not? I replied, I can't talk about it now. I can't stop crying. I just need to get it out of my system. She replied, okay, you know yourself what is best for you at present. Just think carefully whether you should be working if you feel so bad. Followed by, maybe you need to take time off. And the conversation concluded with your next one, please? I said, work is always my priority. I won't let it affect it. I just haven't let myself cry over it till now and been thinking about Walton, etc. Once I've let it out tonight, my head will be clearer. Yes, I think you've already told us, but in case anybody forgot, the reference to Walton was an investigation you had at the Walton Centre in Liverpool. Is that right? Yes. This was a very memorable time of your life, wasn't it? Do you agree? Yes. The conversation with Nurse A then, please, a few days later on the following Tuesday, the 30th. If we could go to tile 382, please. She said to you, "Yeah, there's something odd about that night and the other three that went so suddenly." And you replied? I said, "What do you mean?" Did you really not understand what she meant? That's what I've replied at that time. I know. What I'm asking you is whether you really didn't understand what she meant. Did you not understand what she meant? No. Or were you worried that people were starting to put two and two together? No. Well, we'll see from the next text you sent, following up 2 minutes later. Again, this is you to Nurse A. Or that we lost three and in different circumstances. So this is a reference, isn't it, to child A, child C and child D? Yes. All of whom had, on the evidence, odd-coloured or type of rashes that experienced medical professionals had never seen before. That's the evidence, isn't it? Yes. These were not different circumstances, were they? Yes, they were. Well, let's see what your friend thought, who had witnessed two of these incidents, the second being child B, of course. Tile 385. She said, "I dunno, were they that different?" Then, "Ignore me, I'm speculating." And you replied, "What, please?" I said, "Well, child C was tiny, obviously compromised in utero. Child D septic. It's child A I can't get my head around." Then Nurse A replied, "Was she? In other words, child D, definitely septic. Did the post-mortem examination confirm?" And what did you reply? I said, "I don't think the 4 p.m. is back yet. Debrief is next week, but I'm away." Then Nurse A to you at 22:07, she said, "When's child A's? They were talking of doing a joint one for all three as all close together and similar in being full arrests in babies that are essentially stable. Don't know if they are doing though." And your response, please? I replied, "Oh, not sure, but child C's is Thursday and child D next week. No mention of child A." And then she said, "I'd like to go to child D and child A's." And you replied? I said, "Speak to Arian. I think child D's is a 6th. Then on to the next tile, please, 395. We've moved on in time, more than 3 months, haven't we, from the death of child D by the time you were searching for the father of child D. The distraught father? Yes. A name you were carrying in your head? Yes. The next tile, please, another search a minute later for the father of child D. You didn't really forget child D, did you, Lucy Letby? Yes, I didn't recall specific details at the time of my interview. Just before we leave the subject of Facebook, although we will return, does Facebook store the names that you search? Yes. How many names does it store? I don't know. Could I suggest the last 6? I don't know. I can't answer that. So what I'm suggesting to you is that if you're on Facebook all the time, which you are, and when you go back days, weeks, months later, you have the source of the name either in your head or written down somewhere. Are you saying in your case that it was in your head? Yes. Yes. And yet you say you couldn't remember child D when the police were asking you questions in interview? Yes, not specific details. Is it your case that staffing levels contributed to child D's death? No. Is it your case that medical competence contributed? Yes, I believe she didn't have the appropriate treatment at the start of her life. So the delay with antibiotics? Yes, it may have had an impact on her, yes. They don't guard against air embolus though, do they? Antibiotics? No. Do you accept that once child D got into the neonatal unit, she was treated properly? I haven't gone through all of her notes to be able to make that assessment myself. Do you accept that by the end of the day shift, on the 21st of June, child D was stable with a minimal amount of respiratory support in no additional oxygen? She was responsive and was making good progress. I'd have to refer back to the notes, but yes, if that's what's documented. That's what Dr. Rylance told us on the 8th of November from Switzerland. Okay. And it's also what she wrote in her notes at tile 158. Do you accept that Caroline Oakley's nursing notes are accurate? Do you want to look at them? Are you asking me about a specific note, or in general? To be fair to you, let's have a look. It's tile 207. If you ever want to look at the evidence, you just let me know. We see this as a note made after Child D's death. She recounts taking handover, doing the necessary checks, the position of the lines, the fact that she was on, it says, NCAP in air. Do you accept her notes? Yes. Do you remember her saying that Child D was breathing beautifully in air, and her blood saturations of oxygen are the highest they can be? I don't recall her exact turn of phrase, no. Let's look at tile 169, which is her observations. We can just scroll down, please. Thank you. We see the respirations. Obviously, things go wrong at around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. If we look down, please, the temperature is pretty much on the money, isn't it? Yes. Respirations fine? Yes. Anything there of concern? No. Do you accept the evidence of Caroline Oakley, that she was on a break when Child D collapsed? I don't recall. I don't know how to answer this sort of question. Well, she told the jury that she was on a break when Child D collapsed. Do you accept that evidence, or do you say that she wasn't on a break, or something else? I couldn't say either way, because I don't know. Well, you were there. You heard her evidence. Do you want to make any further comment about it? No. Let's go back to tile 168, please. If she was on a break, who was the other nurse in the nursery? Myself. Do you remember Catherine Percival Ward confirming to the court that Caroline Oakley was on a break? Yes. So 2 of your colleagues, one of whom is a friend, do you accept that she was on a break? Yes. Can we look at the neonatal review, please, for Child D? Do you see there at line 119, marked with a black line, the initial collapse of Child D? Yes. Do we see that in the 30 minutes prior to Child D's collapse, you are not recorded as doing anything for any of the children in the neonatal unit? Can you repeat that, please? Certainly. Might be best to concentrate on lines 109 down to 118. What I asked you was whether there is any record of you doing anything else for any of the other children in the neonatal unit in those 30 minutes or so. No, the last record is at 0100. Yes, so that's line 108, which is the child MRE. Is that right? Yes. Then there are 2 previous entries a quarter of an hour earlier at 0045, lines 101 and 102. Yes. Then before that at 15 minutes for JE. Is that right? Yes. Can we go to tile 201, please, keeping that neonatal review open? Scroll down, thank you. The blood gas for Child D, taken at 0114, was done by you, wasn't it? I don't know. That's your writing, isn't it? It could be my writing, yes. Yes, it is. You see where it says 01, and then the 14 in that slightly elevated, yes, numbers? That's the way you write these numbers, yes. You're not the only person, of course, but that is the way you do it, yes. And that is your writing, isn't it? It looks like my writing, yes. Yes. Why didn't you sign it? That's just an oversight, the same as the gas on the next line down hasn't been signed. It's just an error that happens from time to time. Yes, well, of course, by the time of the subsequent gas, Child D was in a pretty poor state, wasn't she? 0221. Is that right? The gas is good. I'm not sure about her clinical picture at that time. It's a good blood gas. Can we go to tile 202? You see there's some observations at 0115, this line? Yes. If we scroll down, please, there's quite a lot of detail filled in there and signed by Caroline Oakley, isn't it? Yes. Do you remember she told the jury she got those details from the girls? No, I don't remember that. Because she was on a break. You don't remember that bit of evidence? No. Were you looking after Child D while she was on a break? No. Who was? I don't recall that there was. who was allocated to look after her. I think Caroline had only gone on her break potentially 5 minutes before. Tile 203, please. You see the infusion chart? Yes. We have the infusion at 0125, which is the same as what we see in the neonatal review at line 116. Yes. If anybody wants to make a note, it's the same as tile 203 in the sequence. This is whilst Caroline Oakley was on her break, she said. I don't agree with that. When we sign medications, we sign at the time it's given. But it depends whether she's telling the truth about that, I suppose. Doesn't it? Yes. Yes. Whose handwriting is the date and time in the date and time started column? It looks like mine. Did you take the opportunity whilst Caroline was absent to sabotage Child D? No. When the alarms went off for Child D, you were standing over her though, weren't you? I don't recall. Well, who else could it have been? Go back to the population distribution chart, please, at tile 168. Let's look at the candidates for who it could have been looking after Child D in Nursery 1. Caroline Oakley wasn't there. Nurse C? Is she a possibility? Yes. But she said she wasn't there, so that depends on whether she's telling the truth or not. Who are the other possibilities? Catherine Percival Ward? Yes. Who had what? 4 children to be looked after? Yes. What about Liz Marshall? Would she be in Nursery 1? No. No. It was you, wasn't it? I can't confirm that. I would have been in Nursery 1 with my babies, but other staff may have been in and out of the nursery at that time as well. Can we go to tile 221, please? There's an entry at 0130. Do you see that? Yes. Whose handwriting is oral secretions plus plus? I can't say definitively. Whose does it look like? It could be mine. Why were you writing in Child D's chart if it was you at 0130, if you were not the person looking after her? It may have been something that I documented alongside Caroline Oakley, who's filled in the other columns. Yes, but if she's on her break, she can't have filled them in at the time, can she, if she's on her break? So you mean she's filled them in at 1:30 when she's on her break, retrospectively? Well, it all depends, doesn't it? If we move across, please, in the chart towards the right of it, do you see where it says suction PPLL? Yes. Whose writing is that? It's not mine. I would assume it's Caroline Oakley. Who's LL in this context? It would be me. Because I'm suggesting you were, to use Dr. J-Ram's phrase, babysitting Child D. You had, as a matter of fact, been in Nursery 1 throughout, hadn't you? I can't comment on that. I don't know for certain. Let's look back at the neonatal review, please, if we can, starting at 120 in the neonatal review, line 120. This is after Child D's first collapse now. We see that you make a note at 0130. Is that right? Do you see that? Yes, for JE, yes. Yes, for JE. Were you really? Sorry, 120 is Child D at 0130. Yes, that's Caroline Oakley referring to me in her nursing notes, I believe. Oh, I see. Also at 1:30, line 122, you are, as you just told us, making an entry for JE. Yes. And we see, don't we, that you were putting something onto JE's, if the record is correct, neonatal fluid balance chart. Yes. Were you really doing that as Child D was collapsing? I can't give a definitive time. Well, have you tried to make the paperwork look like you were doing something else at the time Child D collapsed? No, I've not falsified any paperwork. Ever? No. Well, we'll come to that. We see at 126 over the page 127, 129 and 132. Were these really being put in just after Child D had collapsed? Medications, yes, they are signed for at a specific time, yes. 139? Fluid balance charts and observation charts may not be definitively accurate of that time, no, but medication would be. At 155 to 162, We see that you were involved in giving medications to child D before her second collapse at about 3 a.m. Yes. Do you remember that? No. Child D's third collapse and final collapse we see at line 185, don't we? Yes. At 174, about 25 minutes before child D's final collapse, you were setting up an infusion with Caroline Oakley for child D, weren't you? Yes. We see that information, if we could please, Mr. Murphy, at tile 237. Despite all that, you're saying you don't, or you didn't, when the police were asking you about it, really remember child D. That's right. Child D died because you injected her with air, didn't you? No. And I'm suggesting that's the reason she had air in her great vessels, like child A and child O. I did not give her air. Did you think that the paperwork wouldn't tie you to child D at the time she collapsed? Can you rephrase that, please? Yes. When you saw the paperwork when the police were asking you questions, did you think that there wasn't really a link between you and child D at the time of her collapse? No, I had other babies. I wasn't caring just for child D. Did you deliberately take the decision just to say, well, I don't remember her, to avoid answering questions? No. Or to try to avoid answering questions? No, I tried to be as cooperative as I could be. You did remember child D, didn't you? Not in specific details at the time of the interview, no. Despite all that? Yes. Despite the fact that, as you have told us, you have a very good memory, particularly a good memory for names. Yes. My lord, I'm going to move on to child E. Can I have a break, please? I'm sure his lordship will give you a break. Yes, certainly. Could I just tidy up one thing which will take about 2 minutes? Certainly, yes. Thank you. I'd like to give you a document, please. This relates back to child C. It will only take 2 minutes. If Mr. Murphy would assist by putting up J2038. His lordship asked you a question about taking hand and footprints from a child. Yes. And he asked you specifically about whether that was done before or after death. Yes, and it can be done either way. I'm going to suggest to you that that is untrue. You are lying about that it can be done before death in these circumstances. No, I don't agree. Well, let's look at the pro forma. We do take footprints on babies that are alive. For example, child B was alive and had footprints taken to go with child A. Yes, but that was in very different circumstances, wasn't it? You don't take them of a child that is about to die. Yes, you can, yes. Well, not according to the checklist. Do you follow the rules, or not? Yes. Right. What's the heading of this particular checklist that relates to what is done for parents following the death of a child? There's nothing about as they are dying here, is there? Well, it's very unusual to have a baby like child C that was dying for a prolonged period of time. And are you saying that it would be appropriate in those circumstances to intrude into those last moments with a parent to take hand and footprints? No, it may be something they actually want to be involved with. Yes, but they didn't. Did they? I can't say. I don't know. Is this your something writing on the form as a matter of interest? No. Because actually, you shouldn't have been having anything to do with child C at this point, should you? Should you? No. No. You may remember that at the beginning of each session, I tend to ask you the same question, which is whether or not there is anything that you have already said that you wish to review in the light of the time that you've had to think about it. No. We're going to move on now to the case of child E. Is it your case that staffing levels contributed to the collapses or death of child E? No. Is it your case that medical incompetence contributed to his collapse or death? Possibly, yes. Whose medical incompetence? The medical team that were on that night. And who in particular are you suggesting was incompetent? I don't think it's being incompetent. I just think collectively the doctors could have acted sooner to respond to his bleeding issue on reflection, seeing how much blood he had lost and what transfusion he was given or not given. So reacted sooner? Yes, or treated the bleed. Well, of course their reaction would be dependent on when you told them there was an issue, wouldn't it? Yes. And you understand, don't you, that we, the prosecution, are suggesting that you didn't tell them as soon as child E did start to bleed? Yes. Because you will understand that it's the prosecution case that the mother of child E and F is telling the truth, and that child E was bleeding at 2100 hours. Yes. But you didn't tell anybody about that until at least an hour later, did you? No, I don't agree with that. When are you suggesting that something that wasn't done should have been done? I think once child E was profusely bleeding after 10 o'clock, maybe a blood transfusion or something could have been given sooner. I don't know if that would have made a difference to him. Right. To whom do you attribute that mistake? The medical team collectively. That's a medical decision. So Dr. Harkness? And the other doctors. It was Dr. C, I believe, who was the consultant. Yes. Was there another doctor on that night? Only from his evidence, Dr. Wood. Yes, Dr. Wood, the SHO. Yes. And we'll come back to him soon. So one or a combination of those three medical practitioners. It's a medical decision, yes, to prescribe and give a blood transfusion, yes. During the evidence relating to child E, do you remember that your friend Belinda Williamson gave evidence? Yes. And she was asked about the plumbing and the drains in the neonatal unit when she gave evidence on the 16th of November. Do you remember those questions? I can't remember specifically, no. What have the plumbing and the drains got to do with the death of child E? I don't think I've ever said that they've got something to do with the death of child E. I think it's an important factor to note that there were often plumbing issues within the unit. What's that got to do with the death or the collapses of any of these children? I'm not saying that it is, but I think it's a contributing factor that if the unit is dirty and staff are unable to wash their hands properly, or we used to have raw sewage coming out of the sinks running onto the floor in the intensive care nursery, and I think potentially that's not a safe working environment. I don't know what effect that might have on a baby. Raw sewage coming out of the sinks in nursery 1? Yes. When did you first say that? I talked about there being sewage coming from to police. Will we find a Datix form with raw sewage coming out of the sink in nursery 1 on it? Not from myself, no. Or are you aware of anybody putting in a Datix form? I don't know. We often had the plumbers in attending to the sink in nursery 1. So you're saying that the wastewater was attached to what? The soil pipe? Yes, we used to get backflow from the theatre sinks, and in the CLS labour ward theatre sinks, we used to get sewage coming back through the sink, yes. But you never filled in a Datix form? Not personally, no. No. You did fill in a Datix form relating to the death of child E, though, didn't you? Yes. I'd just like to have a look at that, please. It's tile 218. We'll click on it, please, Mr. Murphy. Just so that we understand. Under what circumstances do you, and I'm talking about from your personal perspective now, under what circumstances do you fill in one of these forms? A Datix is completed as standard procedure if there's any death on the unit, and it's there for any other issues that I myself might want to raise that needs looking into. So any concerns I might have or anything that's gone against policy, anything that I think needs escalating to be reviewed by senior staff. You filled in this form, did you? I don't remember from memory. All right. As we've said many times, it isn't a memory test. Does the person who fills the form in effect, digitally sign it? Yes. So we see instant reporter there, don't we? Yes, so I filled in the form. Okay. And is there some way of knowing when this form was filled in? I think at the very top of the form, I think there's a date and time if I'm correct. I'm not. Okay. Mr. Murphy would oblige, please. So there, it was submitted on the 4th at 05:53. So that's you opening it, is that right? That's the time the form is submitted, so that's when it was filed and saved. So this is an electronic process, is that right? Yes. And you have to put in your personal PIN number or something to access the blank form? Yes. Just as we scroll down it, would you tell us which bits you filled in? So the ID and the name, the reference, No, that's automatically generated by the computer. Even the name? Yes, because it's part of the Meditech system. So what, you log into Child E's individual case, is that right? Yes. And this list of data that we see there self-populates? From memory, I think so, yes. All right. So we go to location, which is a second section. Is that self-populated as well? It's something I would fill in. It's a drop-down box that you have to select from. The coding section next? Yes, that's me. Well, not the bottom two, but the first 4 lines. So clinical incident neonatal unit. It says pick list. Is that where you're hitting a drop-down menu? Yes. The subcategory we see this has got nothing to do with the result of staffing levels. No. Which is your selection? Yes. Risk grading? Is that what you put in? No, I'm not sure about that. It says no harm caused, doesn't it? Yes. Which certainly doesn't make sense in the context of what we see in the next section. So details, incident date, selected by you? Yes. The time of the incident, selected by you? Yes. The fact that it's an unexpected death following a GI bleed, full resus unsuccessful. Then you have inserted the time of death. Is that right? Yes. Actions taken and report to NRLS. Is that done by you? No, the last input I have there is the actions taken. Those bottom 2 rows, they're not entered by me. I'm not sure what they stand for. No, okay. So does it come to this, therefore, that so far as your input is concerned, it's simply in effect reporting the death, so what we see at the bottom of the very first page? Yes, so it's standard practice if a baby dies that we select that on a pick list and submit a datix, yes. If we can start with the Child E sequence, please. It's tile 26. Do you remember sending a text on the 2nd of August to one of your friends saying, "Too Q word"? No. Too quiet? Not from memory, no. Is too Q word, is that a sort of thing that you would send in a text? Yes, possibly. Yes. And what does it mean? Q is, we use the Q word, is quiet. And so by too Q word, what did you mean by that? That the unit is quiet at that point. If we go to that in the Child E sequence, please, it's tile 26. Yeah, it's fine. Bit too Q word, really. Did you not like it when it was quiet? No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just sometimes it gets very quiet and we don't have many babies and you find you can be sitting around a lot and obviously we're there to help babies. So you don't like it when there's nothing to do? Well, there's always something to do. I didn't say there's nothing to do. But sometimes the shifts, yes. Sometimes they can be long nights if you haven't got as many babies on the unit, yes. So does it come to this then? That you enjoyed it when it was busy? I enjoyed being busy, yes. So rather than being a negative, being busy, so far as you are concerned, being busy was a positive. I enjoyed being busy when it was managed, yes. We've just seen that on this particular shift, so this is Sunday the 2nd into Monday the 3rd of August, you were Child F's designated nurse. Yes. Not Child E's. No, I don't believe so, no. Can we go to tile 30, please, on Child E's sequence? Can we just click on go down to the bottom of that sheet, please? That's your handwriting, isn't it? Yes. Is there any reason that you were telling the doctors that they had made a mistake on the calculations when you were not the designated nurse? Yes, because 2 nurses would have had to have verified that prescription was wrong, so myself and another nurse would have had to have checked that. The other nurse on this shift was Mel Taylor, wasn't it? I can't recall that from memory. Well, that's what the evidence shows. Okay. Mel is senior to you, isn't she? She is. Why was she not speaking to the doctors, given she was senior and this was her baby? It doesn't go on seniority. 2 of you are responsible for signing a medication, therefore it's up to either of you to escalate any problems. Had you fallen out with Mel by this stage? No, because she wouldn't speak to you about Child A's death in the aftermath of his death. No, I hadn't fallen out with anyone, no. Is this an example what we can see here of the fact of what Arian Powell told us, that you were always prepared to call out other people's mistakes at the time? Yes. And that you were not afraid to confront the medical staff if you thought they'd got it wrong? Yes. Were you very confident in your abilities? In my clinical competencies? Yes. Yes. Did you think that you were a cut above some of the other nurses, including Mel? No. If we could go back to the previous part of this tile, please. This is Melanie Taylor's note. Do you see that? Yes. You see where she records, Mum and Dad visiting at start of shift. Mum has been 2 times with expressed breast milk overnight. Yes. That's what the mother of child ENF was doing, wasn't it, throughout this period? She was providing her own milk for her boys. Yes. Do you remember her telling the jury when she gave evidence that at the time she felt it was the only thing that she could do for them? Yes. And do you remember her always being very punctual in the provision of milk? I can't recall that now. A lot of parents on the unit expressed, so I can't recall specifically what her expressing habits were. If we go to tile 104 next, please. This is Nurse B's note from towards the end of the day shift, which immediately precedes the night shift on which you were Child E's designated nurse. Yes. This shows very good progress, doesn't it? Yes. And of course, this was day 6 of life for Child E. Yes. And he was doing very well, wasn't he? He is requiring insulin, so I wouldn't say he's very well, but yes, he is making progress with his feeds, yes. There was no suggestion, was there, prior to you coming on duty at 7:30 or 8 p.m. on this day, that he had any gastrointestinal problems? No, that's right. And this was day 6 of life, so far as he was concerned. Yes. Let's go to the population distribution chart for the night shift, please, on which he died. It's tiles 114 to 115. So that gives us, doesn't it, the list of staff that were working that night? Yes. And if we move on to tile 115, we see the population distribution. Is that right? Yes. Do we see there that child E and F were the only occupants of nursery 1? Yes. That you were the only nurse in nursery 1? Yes. And that all the other babies were elsewhere being looked after by other staff? Yes. So other than people coming and going to collect equipment from nursery 1, you in effect had the nursery to yourself. I was the only nurse allocated babies, yes. Yes. Are you suggesting, just so that we understand, that from a staffing point of view and from your own perspective, there was anything wrong with this arrangement? No. When you were being asked questions by your counsel back on, I think it was May 5th, relating to events of this particular night, do you recall saying that you remembered that when the mother of child E and F appeared, she was bringing milk? No, I can't recall what I said. Well, what's the truth of it? Is that the position, that when the mother of child E and F, whatever time it is, and we'll come to that, but is it the position that whenever it was the mother of child E and F appeared, she was bringing breast milk? I don't recall from my memory now. Well, you said it. That's what you told the jury on May 5th. Okay. Is what you said true? I can't recall from my memory right here, right now. Right. So on the 5th of May 2023, you could remember an event that happened on the 3rd of August 2015, so about 8 years earlier. But you're saying that since the 5th of May this year, you have forgotten that when the mother of child E and F appeared, she was bringing... No, I don't think I've ever remembered specifically, but I've accepted that if the mother of child E and F says she was bringing milk down, that is a normal occurrence. I want to understand what you're saying about this. You are saying that if the mother of child E and F is saying she brought breast milk down on the 3rd of August, then you accept that's a normal occurrence. Yes, it's a normal occurrence for mums to bring down expressed breast milk. I cannot say here and now what time the mother brought milk down if that's what she did. I'm not asking you about the time. I want to be absolutely clear about that. We'll come to the time in a moment. What I'm asking you is what you remember about when the mother of child E and F appeared. I don't have any clear memory. Right, well, I will remind you. It's page 128 of the transcript, May 5th. These are questions being asked of you by Mr. Myers, all right? Okay. If anybody wants to check what I'm reading, it's at the bottom of page 127, which was towards the end of the day on May 5th. This is your defence barrister, Mr. Myers, asking the questions. He asks you, "You described her coming down and you made reference to Dr. Harkness. Could you repeat what you were saying about that, please?" And you replied, "Dr. Harkness was there when the mother of child E and F came down, and she was updated by Dr. Harkness about the blood that we'd found and the medications that we were then starting to treat that." And then this is the particular question and answer that I'm interested in. Mr. Myers asks you, "Do you recall why she had come down?" You replied, "I don't recall specifically, no." Did she have anything with her when she came down to the neonatal unit? Do you know what you said? She brought expressed breast milk down. I think she brought breast milk down. Yes. Question, expressed breast milk? You replied, yes. No, but I did say, I think she brought expressed breast milk. I at no point was 100% certain that is why she was there. That's your answer, is it? Yes. Why didn't you think that when I was asking the question about 2 or 3 minutes ago? Because it's the same thing. I can't be certain on either of them. I said I think to Mr. Myers, and today I'm saying I can't be sure. You understand, don't you, the significance of the bringing of the milk as far as the timing is concerned? Yes, I do. And you explain what it is, please? Sorry? Well, you understand it, so you explain what the significance is, please. A suggestion is that the mother of child E and F brought milk down at 2100 hours, and child E was bleeding at that point. Yes. I believe it was later in the evening. Well, I know that, but what's the significance of 2100 hours? She made a telephone call to her husband. Oh, yes, but let's just park the phone call for a second. What's the significance for child E of 2100 hours? That's when the mother of child E and F thought she saw blood. But what was child E due at 2100 hours? A feed. You know that, don't you? Yes. Why didn't you say that when I asked the question? I don't know what you mean. Really? Yes. Well, the significance is because you knew, and you know, because you heard the mother of child E and F say it from the very spot where you now sit, that she fixes the time of 2100 hours not only by reference to the phone call that she made to her husband, the father of child E and F, but also by the fact that child E was due milk at 2100 hours. Yes. And that's why she said that she came down just before 2100. Yes. You understand all that, don't you? Yes. And that's why I'm suggesting to you, the fact that she came down with milk and you remember it is part of the evidence that fixes the time at 2100 hours. Do you understand? I don't agree. You don't agree? No. I just want to understand what you are saying and what you do agree with, all right? You are saying, as I understand it at least, and please disagree if you wish, that the 16mm mucky aspirate, as you have described it, yes, was taken before the 9 o'clock feed, before the 2100 hours feed. Yes, it was. So we are agreed on that. Yes. And it would therefore follow, wouldn't it, that child E was due to be fed at 2100 hours. Where was the milk coming from? So we have a milk fridge stored in nursery 1, so whenever parents bring down expressed breast milk, they put it in the fridge, and it's ready then for any feeds that are happening. We've heard from a number of your colleagues about a system that was in place. Yes. How long before the delivery of the milk into the baby is the aspirate taken from the baby? Immediately before. Right. Well, where had the milk come from that you were about to give child E when you took that aspirate? So parents don't bring fresh milk for every feed. The mother of child E and F may well have had milk gathering in the fridge, so if she's expressing more than child E's requirements at that time, then mums often have multiple bottles in the fridge. Well, that's a possibility, but I'm asking you what you remember. Well, I don't remember. You say, as I understand it, and again I'm just checking that I've understood things correctly, that as a result of obtaining that 16mm mucky aspirate, you showed it to Belinda Simcock. Yes. And that she and you agreed that the feed would be omitted. Yes, and that we needed to speak to the SHO. Yes, and the SHO in this context was Dr. Wood. Yes. Do you remember him saying that if he had ever been asked that question about omitting a feed, he would have made a note in child E's medical records? Yes. There is no note, is there? No, we've seen before sometimes doctors don't make notes when they said they would have. Well, there was Dr. Maybury, and we heard about the circumstances in which Dr. Maybury didn't make a note, didn't we? Yes. And he had specifically asked, I think it was Sophie Ellis, to make a note. And this was for one of the babies OP or R, I think at about 7:30 one morning, just as shifts were handing over. Is that right? Yes. What's the difference between Sophie Ellis's note and your note? For the babies OP and R? Yes. Her note for babies OP and R, and your note in this case. Well, I'll tell you. The difference is that Sophie Ellis names the doctor, doesn't she? You don't name the doctor. No. No. If this was really what Dr. Wood said or the advice he gave, why didn't you note his name? We don't always write the doctor's name. Sometimes we do just refer to them as SHO and registrar. There's only one SHO at night. But it makes it a bit more difficult to check, doesn't it? If anybody ever wants to check if you don't know the name. No, if staff really wanted to know, reading my notes, who the SHO was, they could look at the rota and see who was on. There would only be one SHO on at night. What time do you say that conversation happened? Sometime after 2100 when I got the aspirate back. Well, it would have to be. Thank you for that. But can you be a little bit more particular? No, I can't. No. You do understand, don't you, that we're suggesting this conversation never happened? Yes. At 2200 hours, you wrote in your nursing note, albeit it wasn't written on the chart, that there was a large vomit of fresh blood. Yes. Why wasn't that written on the chart? That's an error on my part. Pretty important error, though, isn't it? Yes, but it is documented in my notes, and I believe Registrar Harkness was aware and was there when it happened. So you're saying that Dr. Harkness was actually there when this vomit happened? Yes. So have I understood the position, then, that this was a problem that first showed itself before the 9 o'clock due feed? Yes. And that it took you, therefore, about an hour, actually, to call for a doctor to check on this child? No, I don't agree with that. Well, when did you first call for a doctor to check on this child? I don't recall speaking to a doctor, but I know myself and Belinda, we did. It was discussed with an SHO on the telephone, I think. I don't know by who. Well, who was the doctor who was first actually called to see child E? Dr. Harkness. When was he called? Once he'd had a bleed at 2200. So an hour after a problem first manifested itself, according to you. Yes. If you had seen blood around child E's mouth or his lips, what would you have done? If I'd seen blood at any point, I would have escalated that to somebody. To who? To either the nurse in charge or one of the doctors. Do you agree that blood was never escalated to anybody until 2200 hours? Can you say that again, please? Yes. Do you agree that blood was never escalated to anybody until 2200 hours? Yes, because there wasn't blood prior to 2200 hours. Well, that's one of the issues, isn't it? Whether there was or there wasn't. Yes. Was the mother of child E and F telling the truth about you? That's... in what sense? In the sense of what she says you said to her at 9 p.m, 2100 hours. The mother of child E and F says that when she came down to see her boys with milk at 2100 hours, she saw child E with blood around his lips. Do you remember the picture that she drew? Yes. Perhaps just to remind us all, and to remind you, we'll look at the picture, please. It's J2434. So that was the mother of child E and F's best effort to replicate in visual form what it was she saw. Yes. This has got nothing to do with blood coming up an NG tube, has it? No. No, because if it came up an NG tube, it couldn't end up on the lips, could it? No. No. So we can exclude as a possibility that this has got anything to do with blood coming up an NG tube. Do you agree? Yes. Did you ever see anything like that? Child E did have blood around his mouth, yes, after 2200. After the vomit? I can't recall specific times, but he did have blood on his face, yes. Well, we've dealt with your note, or a note of the vomit. Is that when you are saying child E had blood like that? There was no blood prior to that, so yes. Is the mother of child E and F mistaken when she says that when she went down, other than her boys, you were the only person there? No, I accept that. I don't have any memory, but I was allocated to look after both of them in nursery 1, so yes. It's just that at other times you suggested that when the mother came down, Dr. Harkness was there. Yes, he was there at 2200. So I'll ask the question again then. Is the mother of child E&F mistaken when she says that when she came down, you were the only person other than her boys that were there? When do you say that you were there alone? When the mother of child E&F was present on the handover, so shortly around 8 p.m? There was no question of any blood at that point, was there? No. You're not telling the truth about that, are you? Yes, I am. I'm going to suggest to you that when the mother of child E and F came down at 2100 hours, you had inflicted an injury on child E to cause bleeding. No, I do not accept that. That did not happen. And that is why, as she describes it, he was screaming. No. Did you at any stage ever fall out with the mother of child E and F? No. Just looking at that picture, have you ever seen blood on any other baby at any time like that? In my career? Yes. No. So can we take it, therefore, that to see blood on a baby like this is wholly exceptional? Yes. Did you tell the mother of child E and F that the source of the blood was the insertion of the nasogastric tube? No. Have you ever told anyone that a nasogastric tube can cause a small amount of blood? Yes, it can cause a small amount of irritation when it's first inserted, yes. And how much blood does it produce? Very minimal. About a milliliter of blood? I couldn't be specific, but it would be a small amount mixed in with stomach acid. This is blood in the mouth that we're talking about, just so that you understand. Is that what you're agreeing to? No, I'm agreeing that a nasogastric tube irritation can cause some blood to come back from the NG tube. From the tube? Yes. Not into the mouth? No. Do you remember telling the police in your interview in the case of child N that NGTs can cause bleeding? Yes. So you do agree that that is the sort of thing that you do say, that you have said? Yes, I haven't said that it causes blood around the mouth, but it does cause blood, yes, sometimes, with trauma, yes. And that is what you told the mother of child E and F, wasn't it? No. When she queried why it was her son had blood round his mouth? No, I don't recall saying that. Well, you say you don't recall saying it. Are you saying, I don't believe I would have said that, although it is something that you have said to the police? No, I haven't said it. What do you mean? Sorry? Well, you have said that NGTs cause bleeding. Bleeding orally? Yes. Okay. But you definitely didn't say it on this occasion? No. You are lying about that, aren't you? No. Is it your view that any baby could have a bleed, like child E? Do you mean is it medically possible? I'm asking whether it is your view that any baby can have a bleed like child E. Well, medically speaking, yes. That's what you said to the police, wasn't it? Any baby can have a bleed like child E. Yes. Do you remember saying that in interview? Yes. Do you remember saying as much to your pal, Jennifer Jones-Key, in a text not very long after child E had died? Yes. Just go to tile 253, please. They're your words, aren't they? Yes. Had you ever seen anything like this before, child E? Not a gastric hemorrhage, no. Ever seen one after child E? Not gastric, no. What was your basis for saying that any baby could have suffered this? Medically speaking, at the time, we thought child E had NEC, and the risk of that is bleeding. Have you seen cases of NEC? Yes. Have you ever seen this sort of bleeding? No, I haven't, no. So again, what was your basis for saying that any baby could have had bleeding like this? Because any baby could have had the condition that child E had. I would like to go, in the light of what you have told us, to your defence statement, please, which I think is still on the table in front of you there. Can we go to the section that relates to child E? It's paragraph 67 onwards, and it's at page 9. There you say, I did nothing to harm child E. Yes. I have not falsified any records. No. And you understand, don't you, that we, the prosecution, are suggesting that you have falsified the records in this particular case. Yes. And in particular, relating to the time at which child E started to bleed. Yes. What I'd like you to do, please, is to read out paragraph 69, so that the jury can hear what it was that you were saying in February 2021. When I saw the mother of child E and F on the evening of the 3rd of August, she had come down with some expressed milk. Just pause there. She had come down with some expressed milk. Yes. Why were you so reticent before when I was asking you about that? Because I don't remember that sitting here now. This is something you did remember in February 2021? Yes. Can you carry on, please? I think this may have been later than 2100. Pausing there. This may have been later than 2100. Yes. You're now saying it cannot have been before 2200. No, I think the mother of child E and F came down at 2200. Your case now, correct me if I've misunderstood it, because of the time you say child E started to bleed, is the mother of child E and F cannot have come down to nursery 1 before 2200. Have I understood that correctly? No, I can't say that definitively. I know that there was no blood prior to 2200. Yes. So why do you say, when the mother of child E and F came down, why do you say, I think this may have been later than 2100 hours? Because I believed at the time that it may have been later than 2100. Why didn't you say, the mother of child E and F didn't come down before 2200 hours? She's wrong when she said she came down at 2100. Because I don't think with 100% certainty that I can say that. But that's your case, isn't it, Lucy Letby? No, my case is that there was no blood prior to 2200. I don't remember the mother of child E and F coming down prior to that. I do not recall any blood around child E's mouth when she came down. Is that right? Yes. Nor was there any conversation about a tube irritating him. The next sentence, please. I did say a doctor was coming to see him. I did not send the mother of child E and F away. If the mother of child E and F ever did see blood on child E's mouth, it must have been at a later time than 2100, and after blood came down the tube on free drainage. Yes. We've already established, and you have agreed, that the blood on child E's mouth can't be the blood that comes up the nasogastric tube. No. So how do we square that with what you've just read? If the mother of child E and F ever did see blood on child E's mouth, it must have been at a later time than 2100 hours after blood came down the tube on free drainage. Yes, so it's after he vomited and his tube was on free drainage. That's not what you say in your defence statement, though, is it? It is. I'm saying after blood came down the tube on free drainage. No, but you've just added the little bit, he vomited. Yes. It's not what you say in the defence statement, is it? No, I don't mention vomit there. No. No. Did you understand when you wrote this document that if you failed to mention in it something which you later mentioned in court, a jury might conclude that you've made it up since you wrote this document? I can't say I recall writing this document. And that is what you're doing, isn't it? You are lying about the detail of what you say happened with child E. No. Let's move on to the next paragraph, please. Paragraph 70. You say, I do recall a mucky aspirate in his NG tube. There was 16 ml of bile that needed to be aspirated. That's not what you are saying now, is it? Yes. No. Bile stained is what you now say, isn't it? No, I've only ever referred to it as a mucky aspirate, which is bile. Why not 16 ml of bile? It's just terminology that we use. We often refer to bile aspirates as mucky. Are you seriously suggesting that you aspirated 16 ml of bile from a 6-day-old child? I haven't said it's frank bile, but yeah, a cumulative total, that was accurate, yes, 16 ml. So you're saying it's not bile stained, it's bile. Is that what you say in the defence statement? I say I recall a mucky aspirate and there was 16 ml of bile. So yes, there was bile within the mucky aspirate, yes. This is something that we can go to if you want, but this is something you record in the nursing note as bile-stained aspirate. Do you remember that? Yes. There's a difference, isn't there, between bile-stained and bile? Yes. Why the difference? I can't recall. This says mucky aspirate, and that's what I remember it to be. No. It's an error then, if this says bile. This says 16 mil of bile. Well, then that's an error then. Yes, but why the error? Perhaps there'd been a misunderstanding of what mucky means? No, these are your words. There was 16 mil of bile. Why did you say that in this defence statement? I don't know. Can we go right to the end of it? I did read this to you last Wednesday, but the very final page, page 28. Could you just read out that paragraph, please? This defence statement is not signed. The defendant made additional amendments to the statement at a meeting on the 11th of February 2022. During this conference, however, the defendant accepted this document and the amendments as being an accurate summary of the case. The court and the prosecution will be provided with a signed copy of this document in due course. Was that true? Is that statement true? Yes. So if this was your case as of February last year, why has your case changed? I don't think it's changed. I think there's just been some clarifications with some of the points. You are lying, aren't you, Lucy Letby? No. Paragraph 75, please, of the defence statement. What does that say? After Childie had died, I found blood in his nappy. Have you said that in evidence yet? I don't recall. I'm going to suggest you haven't. Okay. Is it true? Yes. What did you do about it? It was after death. We went to bath him after his death, and there was blood in the nappy. The question, though, is, what did you do about it? It's written in my nursing notes. I don't recall doing anything else about it because Childie was deceased at the time. And which nursing note did you write it in? I think I've written it in my nursing notes. Since we last met, have you been looking at the evidence in Childie's case? Yes. Have you been looking at your nursing notes, anticipating that I might ask you a question or two about them? Yes. Does it say in the nursing notes that there was blood in the nappy? I can't recall. Oh, I think you can. Why didn't you tell the jury? No, I can't remember. Let me give you a copy of your nursing notes. My lord, I'm going to give a copy of this to the jury as well, please, because what we're going to do is to compare what's in the nursing notes to what's in some other documents. Perhaps out of fairness to the witness, I can hand her a copy now. She can read it during the break, and then when we come back, we can deal with this point. All right, so you have an opportunity now to read through that so that you can refresh your memory from what's in that document, and we'll have it when we resume in 15 minutes, please.